The Indian Meteorological Department has warned that Cyclone Tauktae is expected to intensify into a very severe cyclonic storm. The Weather Department also said that the cyclone is likely to pass close to Mumbai and may cause heavy rainfall in the city. Thousands of people, including COVID patients in both Gujarat and Maharashtra, have been evacuated to safer locations. Cyclone Tauktae is expected to reach the Gujarat coast on Monday evening, unleashing winds with speed up to 175 kilometers an hour. Meanwhile, the National Disaster Response Force has increased the number of teams earmarked to undertake relief and rescue measures. The NDRF has formed 100 teams and they are being deployed in the coastal regions of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Kerala, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu.
देखिए साइक्लोन तौते जो है अभी ये महाराष्ट्र और कोंकण कोस्ट के से गुजर रहा है और कल शाम तक आईएमडी के पूर्वानुमान के मुताबिक कल शाम तक लैंडफॉल हो सकता है। लैंडफॉल भावनगर, जूनागढ़ और दीव के आसपास होने की संभावना है। ये लैंडफॉल के समय इसकी कैटेगरी होगी वेरी सीवियर साइक्लोनिक स्टॉर्म। वेरी सीवियर साइक्लोनिक स्टॉर्म जो है 120 किलोमीटर प्रति घंटे और या उससे ज्यादा की हवा चलती है और 160-170 तक जा सकता है। 50 से ज्यादा टीमें एनडीआरएफ की वहां लग जाएंगी शाम तक या देर रात तक और लगातार हम लोग इवैक्यूएशन और अवेयरनेस जनरेशन का काम कर रहे हैं।
So the severe cyclonic storm Tauktae has intensified into a very severe cyclonic storm. The impact expected to be felt today in Maharashtra and Gujarat. The Indian Meteorological Department said it's expected to intensify over the next couple of hours.
Cyclone Tauktae making an impact in Goa and South Konkan. Heavy rains accompanied by strong winds lashed the region and the cyclone is expected to move northwards towards Gujarat.
सोलह और 17 तारीख को ठाणे, पालघर, मुंबई इन जिलों में बारिश होने की भी संभावना है। साथ में 60 to 70 किलोमीटर पर आवर की हवाएं बहने की भी संभावना है।
In anticipation of this impact and a possible power outage, the BMC decided to shift COVID patients from 3 makeshift jumbo centers in Mumbai to hospitals like Seven Hills and Nesco. Not just COVID patients, but even residents of coastal areas like Khardanda are being evacuated to a nearby school.
We are just going to do a door-to-door drive and we have been doing that since morning. So now, ma'am, basically what the BMC does is we have few evacuation centers. For untoward circumstances, if we could shift our locals from here to the centers, there is one Father Agnel school, the other one is Petit school, and we have Gazarban school also. In case of any circumstances, and we have their preparation for food and medical facilities also made available there.
The Met Department has issued an orange alert for Mumbai and Thane for Monday when the cyclone is expected to make landfall, and the government says it is fully prepared. There will be uninterrupted power supply in hospitals, uninterrupted oxygen supplies to hospitals, deployment of police and local agencies, disaster control rooms in sync with government Mantralaya control rooms.
There is an yellow alert for today and tomorrow. There's an orange alert and IMD predicts that tomorrow, along with heavy rains, there would be wind speed of 60 to 80 kilometers. So that is the reason why fishermen have been asked not to venture into the sea. And also, in case of evacuation, the plan is also ready for people who are living near the seashore. In Mumbai with camera person Rajendra Dayalkar, this is Purva Chitnis for NDTV.
Well, let's go across to Purva now, who joins us from the Worli sea face. And Purva, today is when the full extent of the effect of Cyclone Tauktae is expected in Maharashtra.
Yes, that's right. In fact, since morning, like early morning, it has started drizzling. Right now, it is a light to moderate rain in Mumbai, and right now I am at Worli sea face and you can see it's a low tide right now, which means it's a good news for Mumbaikars because even if it rains heavily, low tide is not going to make it waterlogging in any parts of Mumbai. But afternoon around 2 o'clock is when the high tide is expected. It's overcast right now, so you can expect, the IMD has said that in the next few hours the intensity of rainfall is going to go up. As far as the Maharashtra level evacuation is concerned, on the Konkan belt, the different parts like Alibag, Roha, Srivardhan. From there, people have been evacuated, and in total the government says that they have already evacuated 6,500, nearly 6,500 people have already been evacuated to a safer location. And today in Mumbai, the vaccination drive is also cancelled. And as far as the COVID patients is concerned, well, from the makeshift COVID centers, the VKC, Dahisar and Mulund Jumbo centers, patients have already been evacuated. So that is about 580 patients. They have been shifted to a bigger hospital, and the government says that it is fully prepared as far as the the oxygen supply and the power supply to the hospitals is concerned. And as far as the cyclone is concerned, well, we have to see how through the day it makes its impact felt in Mumbai and Thane, because the wind speed is there. The IMD has predicted a wind speed of 60 to 80 kilometer per hour. And right now also it has in fact started raining in Mumbai. We'll have to see how it goes through the entire day.
All right, Purva, thanks so much for joining us. With that, we'll return to you for more updates through the day. Meanwhile, the Goa Chief Minister Pramod Sawant had said that 2 died due to the cyclone in Goa and that most parts of Goa is without electricity. He also appealed to people to stay indoors.
2 डेथ गोवा में रिपोर्टेड है. एक डेथ नॉर्थ गोवा में है. एक लड़के की डेथ हो चुकी है. एक पेड़ उसके माथे पे गिरा, इसलिए डेथ हो चुकी. द सेकंड डेथ जो स्कूटर पे 2 लोग जा रहे थे, इलेक्ट्रिकल पोल उन पे गिर के वो अस्पताल में जाते वक्त एक की डेथ हो चुकी.
In other news now, senior virologist Shahid Jameel has resigned from a forum of scientific advisors set up by the government to detect variants of the coronavirus. He told NDTV on Sunday, days after questioning the authorities' handling of the pandemic, he said it's correct and I have nothing more to say. Dr. Jameel, the chair of the scientific advisory group of the forum known as INSACOG, COVID Genome Surveillance Project. Dr. Jameel had recently written a piece in the New York Times in which he had said that the scientists in India are facing a stubborn response to evidence-based policy making. He had pointed out issues with India's COVID management, especially the lower testing, slow pace of vaccination, vaccine shortage, and the need for a bigger healthcare workforce. He said all of these measures have wide support among my fellow scientists in India, but they are facing stubborn resistance to evidence-based policy making. Noting gaps in the country's data gathering, he said on April 30th, over 800 Indian scientists appealed to the Prime Minister demanding access to the data that could help them further study, predict and curb this virus. Now, the anti-coronavirus drug that has been developed by the Defence Research and Development Organization will be launched today, with Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh distributing around 10,000 doses to some hospitals in the national capital. The drug called 2-deoxy-D-glucose or 2-DG was developed by a DRDO lab in collaboration with Hyderabad-based pharma giant Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. A drug controller general of India and the country's top drug regulator has approved the medicine for emergency use. Now, let's get you COVID numbers from Maharashtra. And Maharashtra on Sunday recorded the second highest number of deaths due to COVID since the pandemic began. A total of 974 deaths were reported on Sunday. The highest fatality count was on April 28th with 985 deaths reported then. 34,389 fresh cases were reported on Sunday. The positivity rate 17.29%. Mumbai reported 1,544 fresh cases and 60 deaths. Now, amid the spiraling cases of COVID in Madhya Pradesh, the government data of deaths is much lower than the figures emerging from cemeteries and crematoriums. The government, however, is still claiming they are not hiding any data. Anurag Dwari investigates.
Are deaths in Madhya Pradesh being underreported? An NDTV reality check at the crematoriums of the state's capital Bhopal sharply contradicts the Shivraj Singh Chauhan-led government's data, which puts the COVID deaths in the capital at 104 in April. The death logbook which NDTV got access to tells a different story. The secretary of the Bhadbhada crematorium claims to have cremated over 1,500 COVID bodies in April alone.
पूरे मार्च में 307 मृतक देह आई उसमें से 152 सामान्य मृतक देह थी और 155 कोरोना मृतक देह थी। वहीं अपन अप्रैल में आते हैं तो अप्रैल में एकदम से विस्फोटक स्थिति आई और पूरे 1 से 30 अप्रैल के बीच में 2052 मृतक देह भदभदा में आई, जिसमें से 398 सामान्य मृतक देह और 1652 कोरोना मृतक देह थी। मृतक के परिजन एक फॉर्म भरते हैं, फिर रसीद कटवाते हैं, तो वो पूरा एक सिस्टमेटिक रिकॉर्ड हमारे पास रहता है और वो रिकॉर्ड प्रतिदिन शासन के भी कुछ विभाग वो प्रतिदिन हमारे यहाँ से रात में आंकड़ा लेकर जाते हैं।
The Bhadbada crematorium and the Zada cemetery in Bhopal were initially authorized to perform the last rites of COVID patients in the city. The committee managing the cemetery says that the month of April was horrific.
अप्रैल की उसकी बात करें तो बहुत भयानक स्थिति थी। कम से कम मैं 30 साल से इस कब्रिस्तान को देख रहा हूँ। 30 साल के अंदर मेरे टाइम के अंदर एक अप्रैल का ऐसा महीना था बहुत टेंशन भरा, बहुत डेड बॉडी है। 388 बॉडी है कोरोना की। कभी हमारे पास ऐसा नहीं है। डेली आम दिनों के अंदर आती हैं तो हमारे पास 4-5 आती थी, लेकिन इसके अंदर 15, 18, 20, 27, 32 ऐसी बॉडी है कंटिन्यूज आई। लेकिन सच्चाई तो है, सरकार ये बात सही है, 100 में 100% आंकड़े छुपा रही। कुछ नर्सिंग होमों की बॉडी आती है तो डायरेक्ट घरों पे दे रहे हैं।
The state government, however, denied under-reporting of deaths.
कि चाहे डेथ का मामला हो या डेथ ऑडिट का मामला हो, ये छुपाने का, इसको हाइड करने का ना कोई मंशा है और ना इसकी जरूरत है।
Data accessed by NDTV shows that in Bhopal alone, adding up the figures from the cemetery and crematorium, showed 3,811 COVID bodies were cremated in April, with 2,557 bodies from Bhopal district alone. But according to government figures, there were only 104 deaths in April from COVID in Bhopal. The official death figure in the state during the entire COVID period is 6,913 so far, while there have been a total of 846 deaths in Bhopal according to official state data. With Anurag Dhwari in Bhopal, Bureau Report, NDTV.
No dignity in death in Nalanda in Bihar as a COVID victim's body was taken to the crematorium in a municipal corporation cart. The video that's come to light is from the 13th of May, and the villagers there claim and they're alleging that the corporation took 16,000 rupees to take the body and cremate it. Now, according to guidelines issued by the state, if the victim's relatives don't cremate the body, the administration is supposed to do so and not charge money. Now, the centre has directed Uttar Pradesh and Bihar to prevent the dumping of dead bodies in the Ganga and its tributaries and focus on their safe disposal and a dignified cremation after hundreds of corpses were seen floating in these rivers following a spurt in the number of COVID deaths also seen buried along the riverbed. At a review meeting conducted on May 15-16, the centre said dumping of dead bodies and partially burnt or decomposed corpses in the Ganga and its tributaries has recently been reported, which is most undesirable and alarming. Now, police units in different districts across UP have stepped up patrolling by the banks and on the river itself to prevent the bodies from being thrown into the river or buried along it. Visuals from eastern UP's Balia district, where decomposed bodies were found floating in the river last week, showed police boats on the river carrying out patrolling. A separate police team was filmed making announcements asking people not to throw bodies into the river.
जो गंगा जी के किनारे हैं वहां पर पुलिस लगातार भ्रमण कर रही है, जिससे कि गंगा जी में किसी भी प्रकार की वस्तु बहाकर, कोई शव बहाकर प्रदूषण न किया जाए। दूसरा, जो आसपास के गांव हैं उसमें लगातार पुलिस भ्रमण करके वहां के मौजूद लोगों से, प्रधानों से, चौकीदारों से, अन्य जो संभ्रांत व्यक्ति हैं गांव के, उनको जागरूक कर रही है इस प्रकार की घटना न करने के लिए।
Well, let's go across to NDTV's Alok Pandey for more. And Alok, this was something that led to a lot of outrage. At first, it was bodies that were found in the Ganga in Bihar and then bodies buried all along the banks of the Ganga in UP. And now the centre has also asked both states to ensure that bodies aren't dumped in this manner and that people are actually helped in cremating their loved ones.
Well, you are right. So, yesterday when we woke up, Gargi, we saw that all newspapers here in Uttar Pradesh had these big advertisements by the UP government where they said that please don't dump your bodies into the river, into any water body. and don't also bury it by any river. In case you cannot find wood for cremation or you find it to be very expensive, the government will bear 5,000 rupees as the cost of a single cremation. Now, obviously, it will be a different story on the ground. We'll get to know about that in a while, I guess, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, about how that's taking place. But the shots that you see now are split-screen shots. On one hand, you had Balia, where those river patrols are taking place. You can see those shots there, where, teams of the police, river police actually, and also from thanas which are by the Ganga are going all over the river, trying to check for any bodies or anyone who may be dumping their bodies into the river. And on the other hand, like you said, the concern is that we are still discovering many places where, you have these bodies buried. For instance, now you see those shots from Prayagraj. And these are shots from two prominent ghats in Prayagraj. And you see that there are multiple bodies that are buried there. Of course, these have been buried over a month, and not all bodies are of suspected COVID patients. But anyway, it's very difficult to know, what bodies are of COVID patients, what bodies are not of COVID patients, because at the end of the day, you haven't had too much testing, tracing in the villages, at least in the last 2-3 weeks from when these bodies would have been dumped here by the riverside. So really concerning situation. Now you see some police have been deployed along these ghats, and they are trying to ask people not to bury their dead, to cremate them. But all in all, a shocking situation.
Right, Alok, and we'll have to wait and see what the impact of the government offer of helping to cremate the bodies and announcing this money for people who are unable to cremate, what effect that has. Thanks so much for joining us with those details. Well, let's now focus on Chennai, where COVID cases remain high and efforts are being made to ramp up vaccination. Senior bureaucrat Gagandeep Singh Bedi, who handled the tsunami in the Cuddalore district of Tamil Nadu, has now been appointed as Commissioner of Greater Chennai Corporation. Well, let's go across to Sam and find out how the bureaucrat is planning to tackle this challenge.
Thank you, Gargi. That's right. Two major challenges. Chennai's numbers hover around 6,500 every day, and also the challenge of providing enough oxygen beds and also regular beds for patients who test positive. With me, Mr. Gagandeep Singh Bedi, who effectively handled the tsunami in the Cuddalore district of Tamil Nadu many years ago. So thank you very much for your time. Two key challenges. What kind of a strategy you're adopting now to tackle these two, sir?
There are two issues. One is about the oxygen beds. So the oxygen beds basically are there in the medical colleges, which is dealt with by the health department. So Government of Tamil Nadu has put up a dedicated team of a number of IAS officers, especially from Industries Department under Principal Secretary's Industries, who keep on augmenting the liquid oxygen capability, which caters to all the government medical colleges and all the private medical colleges. So every day the liquid oxygen capability has been increased, and we have asked industries to set up plants and send it to us. We are also bringing it by the rail from other places. The second strategy is that the corporation, which as such did not have oxygen beds initially, we had only the dispensaries. We have now been augmenting our dispensaries with oxygen beds with standalone concentrators. So we have already ordered for about 3,000 concentrators, and 900 concentrators we have already got, with which we have set up 4 hospitals with the oxygen beds with standalone concentrators, and of course backup of D-type cylinders, etc. also. So these two strategies we are ensuring that in a period of 1 week's time, ultimately we should be having more oxygen beds by about 4,000 to 5,000 in numbers total.
Right. Now in terms of, what shall we say, the testing, vaccination in particular, are you ramping it up? You said you have set a target of 1 lakh in a matter of few days. How much have you achieved? How is it going to help Chennai?
Yeah, actually vaccination out of, let us talk about age appropriate vaccination, above 45, which we have been doing. There is about 23 lakh population, out of which about 13.5 lakh has been vaccinated. Now we do have vaccines available with us, more of COVID shield. But the challenge is in the hesitation of many sections of the society in going for vaccination. So last few days we have been going for a drive. Every day we have about 100 vaccination camps, dedicated camps besides our urban health centers, in order to ensure that more and more people get vaccinated. In fact, yesterday we had about 25 to 30,000. Final figures I am able to get, I'll get shortly. Day before yesterday we had 20,000. Before that it was lesser. So the awareness is increasing, and we are involving more and more of the people in camps, and especially talking to the residential welfare associations and philanthropist organizations also to help us in the vaccination drive.
Briefly, Mr. Sridhar, Deputy Commissioner, you have launched core ambulances. Tell us how it's going to help, particularly when there's a heavy load on the 108 ambulances.
Now we have last week launched this COVID special ambulances in all the zones of Chennai Corporation. The idea is now most of the 108s are ferrying passengers or the patients who require oxygen support. So other kind of patients who require non-O2 ambulances, they are not able to get ambulances on time. So to cater to this need, we have started these ambulances, and there has been very good response. In fact, yesterday we have moved more than 700 patients using this route. So it has been really appreciated well, and we hope it will be a very good initiative from our side.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, and it's already 1 week into the total lockdown across Tamil Nadu, including Chennai, and authorities hope in the coming days the impact of these changes and strategy could be seen in terms of declining numbers. Gargi.
All right, Sam, thanks so much for joining us, and good to know the strategy that is being taken up by the bureaucrats. Well, with that, time for us to slip into a short break. On the other side, we'll focus on Kerala. Sneha will join us for more as stricter lockdowns have been imposed in certain districts. Welcome back. The Delhi police has given a clean chit to B.V. Srinivas of the Congress and Gautam Gambhir, BJP member, Dilip Pandey and others. The Delhi police in its report stated that these politicians were actually trying to help people. Delhi police has submitted its interim report to the High Court. In the reply, Delhi police said they've actually been helping people with medicines, oxygen without charging any money. Remember, there had been major outrage when Youth Congress leader B.V. Srinivas was questioned by the Delhi police, and then later it emerged more people were being questioned, especially since Srinivas has been very prominent in helping people who've been reaching out to him for help with oxygen concentrators and hospital beds. So the Delhi police are giving in that interim report. And in other news related to Delhi, the Delhi Crime Branch has arrested Navneet Kalra from a farmhouse in Gurgaon. Remember, Kalra is accused of allegedly black marketing of oxygen concentrators. Earlier, Saket Court had dismissed his anticipatory bail plea. Kalra had moved the High Court for anticipatory bail. He's accused of storing hundreds of oxygen concentrators in his restaurants that he ran, and that he was doing a business providing them to people. Now, Kerala has extended its lockdown for another week with a stricter triple lockdown in 4 districts that have been seeing the highest number of cases, including state capital Thiruvananthapuram. Well, let's go across to Sneha now for more. And Sneha, tell us, what does a triple lockdown entail?
Well, that's right, Gargi. The lockdown has been extended across the state, but there are 4 districts where there's something called a triple lockdown. Now, this got 3 stages of lockdown. One being there's going to be strict checking in terms of people who will be entering or leaving the district. Only those as part of the essential services or who have got e-passes will be allowed to enter or leave the district per se. So in terms of the intra-district movement, it's going to be extremely restricted wherever there is a triple lockdown. Then within the city permits also, there are going to be strict checkings, as well as the hyper-local areas are going to be locked down where cases have been reported on a larger number, and then of course the residential area where this would be happening. So it's a 3-layered lockdown to ensure that there is very less mobility or movement of people within these worst affected districts. Now, 4 districts where this triple lockdown is: is Thiruvananthapuram, Ernakulam, Thrissur and Malappuram. Now, largely, if you look, the restrictions, even shops, essential shops like groceries, vegetables, meat shops, poultry shops, all of this is also being allowed to open only on alternate days in these districts. So if it's in Thiruvananthapuram, it's Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Thrissur is just allowing 2 days, Ernakulam is the other set of alternate days. So that is, of course, the district's liberty. But it's extremely restricted, even essential shops being allowed to open only on alternate days. Banking services available only on alternate days, not on all days. If you look at the delivery of, newspaper or milk for that matter, all of that needs to be done before 8 o'clock in the morning. So a lot of restrictions in place like this. Test positivity rate still over 25%. And as these districts are seeing some of the highest cases, this strict lockdown also an attempt to ensure that the cases, or at least attempts to see that cases do not rise the way they have been rising in these districts, considering the pressure that is being seen in the hospital infrastructure, the availability of ICU beds or ventilators. So all of that now being seen with this particular restriction in place, strict checking across Kerala, several police personnel, thousands of police personnel have been deployed for this. Gargi?
All right, Sneha, thanks so much for joining us there with the latest. So the lockdown, they're extended in Kerala and a stricter lockdown in those districts. News now from Haryana, and a number of farmers were reportedly injured on Sunday after the Haryana police abatement charged them for protesting at an event attended by Chief Minister Manohar Lal Khattar, even as the state extended its COVID lockdown by another week. Farmer leaders alleged that the police fired plastic bullets and arrested several protesters. They also used tear gas to disperse the farmers who had removed barricades that had been put up by the police. Reports have also emerged of parts of National Highway 9 being blocked by the farmers for around 2 hours on Sunday following the incident. The Grand Trunk Road will be blocked between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. is what the farmers had said. Gurnam Singh Charuni, leader of the Bharatiya Kisan Union, who arrived in Hisar after hearing about the incident, said if all those arrested farmers are not released, then the protesters will gherav police stations in Haryana. The Aam Aadmi Party has said it was them who had put up posters criticizing Prime Minister Modi for exporting COVID vaccines, and the police should arrest the party's leaders and MLAs instead of harassing people who were simply pasting them across the city. Now, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, along with a bunch of his colleagues and other leaders of other opposition parties, had also hit out at the centre, even sharing pictures of the same posters saying, "Arrest me."
Arrest me too. A tweet by Congress leader Rahul Gandhi today as he hit out at the centre over reports of several people being arrested in Delhi allegedly for putting up posters critical of the government's vaccine policy. The posters read, "Modi ji, why did you send our children's vaccines abroad?" Joining him in the gesture of protest, Priyanka Gandhi changed her Twitter profile picture to the poster itself. At least 17 people have been arrested by the Delhi police over posters that came up in the past few days in the capital criticizing Prime Minister Narendra Modi's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. The Delhi police, which reports to the Union Home Ministry, has said it has also registered around 21 cases under the Defacement of Public Property Act and Section 188 in the matter relating to the posters. Congress leader Jairam Ramesh went one step further and said he would put up the posters on his boundary wall and asked the Delhi police and Union Home Minister Amit Shah to arrest him. Other opposition leaders also joined in with TMC's Mahua Maitra, saying the posters asked a valid question. Aam Aadmi Party leader Durgesh Pathak claimed that the posters were put up by him and asked the Delhi police to arrest him as well.
आज करावल नगर से 2 कार्यकर्ताओं को जेल में डाला गया है, गोंडा से 2 कार्यकर्ता, मंगोलपुरी से 2 कार्यकर्ता, रिठाला से, अंबेडकर नगर से, बुरारी से, कालकाजी से, मंगोलपुरी से और लगभग 500 से 550 कार्यकर्ताओं को सुबह बुला लिया जाता है और रात तक पुलिस अपने थाने में बिठाकर उनको इंट्रोगेट करती है। उनका गुनाह क्या है? उनका गुनाह ये है कि उन्होंने मोदी जी से ये प्रश्न पूछा।
The centre has been repeatedly targeted by the opposition over the last few weeks over the issue of vaccine exports to foreign countries, while several states in India suffer from vaccine shortage. With some experts saying that the third wave is likely to be more lethal for children, these leaders are accusing the government of sending crucial stocks abroad. The Delhi police released a statement saying their probe has revealed that leaders and workers of the Aam Aadmi Party helped in financing and organizing the defacement posters, and news reports inaccurately suggesting that only poor people were being arrested. BJP supporters accused the opposition of spreading misinformation.
When you say bachon ki vaccine, then you realize a mistake, then you start saying we are children of Mother India.
With Sukirti Dwivedi, Revati Hariharan for NDTV.
With that, time for us to slip into a short break. On the other side, we'll focus on the cyclone and we'll be joined by experts as the cyclone impact is expected to be felt in Maharashtra and Gujarat today. Welcome back. The latest on Cyclone Tauktae. The Indian Meteorological Department has warned that the cyclone is expected to intensify into a very severe cyclonic storm. The Weather Department also said that the cyclone is likely to pass close to Mumbai and may cause heavy rainfall in the city. In fact, thousands, including COVID patients, have now been evacuated to safer areas. To talk more about this, we're joined by Mahesh Palawat, Vice President Meteorology and Climate Change at SkyMed, and also Brigadier Vinod Datta, a Senior Consultant, National Institute of Disaster Management. Mahesh Palawat, first to you, is this storm expected to intensify even further? Because that's what the warnings are. It's already intensified significantly, and could it intensify even more?
Yes, Gargi, it is.
All right, well, we'll try and reconnect with Mahesh Palawat. Brigadier Vinod Datta, it's an added worry really in the midst of this pandemic and COVID, with patients also being shifted as, both Maharashtra and Gujarat are bracing for the impact of the cyclone.
Gargi, good morning. Yes, you are right. We are facing a very challenging time, and it has been seen that since last year, we have been facing these twin disasters. Like if you recall, Amphan also, we were facing the COVID challenges, and now with this cyclone, Gujarat, which is likely to be impacted very severely, and Kerala, in the early hours or in the wee hours, Gujarat Amreli district received seismic disturbances at the Richter scale of 4.3. So that's a very, very worrying sign, and people are in panic, and it is incumbent on the part of administration and people to keep themselves collected and move to the safer areas, because the storm is likely to intensify. Because if you recall last year Nisarg, it took 5 days to become a very severe cyclone, but this cyclone is moving at a very, very dangerous speed. So people have to be alert. They have to move to safer places. They have to follow the cyclone relief and precaution measures by securing their houses, securing windows, any overhead tanks, keeping the emergency kits with them, keeping the documents ready, and of course, very important, keeping the COVID protocol also in mind.
Right, a very, very challenging, situation that they're faced with. Already there are reports of deaths, 2 deaths in Goa and some deaths in Karnataka also being reported. And the Goa death, one of them was because of a fallen tree. Mahesh Palawat, we were talking about how the cyclone, this storm, and it's expected to intensify even further.
Yes, now cyclone is moving in the favorable weather conditions, and sea surface temperatures are around 31 degrees, and vertical winds here is just 10 to 15 knots. So we expect it to intensify further, but before reaching the coast, it may degenerate slightly. But at the time of landfall, we expect that wind speed will be 150 to 160 km per hour, and gust it may reach to 170 km per hour. As of now, it is moving parallel to Mumbai, and it is around 100 km west of Mumbai. Although Mumbai has not received much rain, but now we expect that rain activities will gradually increase over Mumbai and suburbs, as well as Thane, Dhanu, an adjoining area. And at the time of landfall, we expect that storm surge will be very high, around 6 to 7 feet above the normal waves. Yeah.
Right. In fact, as I was discussing with Brigadier Vinod Datta, that we're seeing more and more of these sort of extreme weather events, cyclonic disturbances. Again, this cyclone has now been, it's been, now changed to an extreme cyclonic event. And earlier last year as well, we saw Mumbai, bracing for a cyclone. Now again, people have been told to stay indoors, and a double challenge with the COVID situation, isn't it, Mahesh Palawat?
Gargi, yes, I agree with you, and I want to add one thing here, that since 1998 to 2001, there has been 46% increase in cyclonic activities in Arabian Sea. And if you remember and recall, almost every year, like in 2019, there were 5 to 8 severe to very severe cyclones which got generated in Arabian Sea, and purely as what Mahesh has already brought out, it is because of the the warm temperature which are being generated. But yes, the only advantage which Mumbai enjoys is that Mumbai's dynamics is not very conducive to cyclones, so it gets petered off there. So that is a saving grace. Otherwise, this is one of the biggest municipalities in the world, and it can really create havoc by storm inundation and various other storm surges.
Right. What we do know, it has started drizzling in Mumbai, early this morning. These visuals that you're seeing are of yesterday and the day before, from where the cyclone has already impacted. But yes, Mahesh Palawat, you're telling us that it is intensifying. We know now that it's gone up to another level of extremely intense cyclonic storm. Right now, it is moving parallel, as we're told, to Mumbai. So there's some sort of relief there that it's not going to, hit our mega city. It's going to Gujarat, and also Brigadier Vinod Datta will have to keep tracking its movement. Right now, it's expected to make landfall around this evening and then pass through the coastline in Gujarat by tomorrow morning.
Yes, Gargi, we have to keep a constant vigil on the cyclone activity, and people are being informed, and I want to congratulate IMD for giving accurate and timely information to people, and people are also being informed through various groups and SMSs, and of course NDTV is doing a wonderful job by sensitizing people and giving advisories. So these measures which have been taken by government and by media, because media plays a very important role, and one of the precautionary measures is that there should be no rumors as such. Like Amreli had seen a seismic disturbance at 4:30 in the morning, so at no cost we should allow any panic among people, because people are already facing COVID challenges, then this cyclone, and the background seismic activity is going to really put them in a very, very traumatic and challenging situation.
All right, Brigadier Vinod Datta, thank you so much for speaking to us. So that is the situation. A cyclonic storm Tauktae expected to affect Maharashtra and Gujarat today. It is expected to hit Gujarat by the evening and cross the coastline. But in Maharashtra and in Mumbai, there's going to be heavy rainfall and high-speed winds that are expected. So everybody is advised to stay indoors. And the National Disaster Response Force has also increased the number of teams they've earmarked to undertake relief and rescue measures. Well, with that, time for us to slip into a short break. We'll get you more news on the other side. Welcome back. Three of Delhi's iconic buildings, which have been symbols of its history and culture, the National Museum, the National Archives and Indira Gandhi National Centre for Arts, are set to be demolished as part of the government's Central Vista project. NDTV brings you this report, which tells you more about the value of these institutions and why architects and historians are criticizing the move. We leave you with this report.
As Delhi gets a facelift as part of the government's Central Vista project worth 20,000 crore rupees, other Delhi institutions are set to be demolished. The National Museum, the National Archives Building, Indira Gandhi National Centre for Arts, Shastri Bhavan, Krishi Bhavan, Vigyan Bhavan, Vice President's Residence, Jawahar Bhavan, Nirman Bhavan, Udyog Bhavan and the Raksha Bhavan. The total area to be demolished is 4,58,820 square meters. Artists and historians are questioning the move. The National Museum holds thousands of invaluable original sculptures, rare idols, priceless coins, paintings and jewelry that connect several points of political and cultural history. These objects will be shifted to North Block or South Block. While the main building of the National Archives will remain intact, the annex will be demolished and a new building constructed.
The archival records kept here include 45 lakh files, 25,000 rare manuscripts, over a lakh maps and 1.3 lakh Mughal documents. Most of these documents are brittle and any careless handling could lead to irrevocable damage and loss.
The Indira Gandhi National Centre for Arts holds a rich collection of heritage pieces, manuscripts and an impressive library. All this will be temporarily shifted to the Janpath Hotel, which has been renovated for the purpose. Recently, in an open letter addressed to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a group of over 80 public intellectuals and scholars from India and abroad, including historian Rumila Thapar, critic and scholar Gayatri Spivak and writer Orhan Pamuk, called for a halt and reconsideration of the government's Central Vista redevelopment project and said, "It is especially troubling that this extravagant project is moving ahead in the midst of a devastating pandemic. The current escalating health crisis calls for a pause and a reset. In the short term, all priorities and resources should be directed at combating the pandemic. In the long term, there should be public consultations so that the future of India's institutions, heritage architecture and historical collections can be determined through a democratic process. The details of the Central Vista demolition are opaque. It is unclear, for example, how the National Museum art objects will be stored and eventually displayed. In February this year, the centre told Lok Sabha that all listed heritage buildings, precincts in the Central Vista region shall be protected and any renovation work shall be taken up after approval of Heritage Conservation Committee. But architects question these claims.
From a historical and town planning point of view, the demolition of the National Museum and IGNCA is wrong. The government claims that it is still conserving the heritage. Again, it is wrong because it is conserving a few buildings and that also the skeletons of the buildings. So in other words, what they're doing is the heritage is being conserved by conserving the building but hollowing out its meaning.
Amid criticism of the project, the government recently prohibited photography and video recording of the Central Vista construction work and in court requested dismissal of petitions against the project by calling the petitions an abuse of the process of law. In New Delhi, with camera person Prem Singh, this is Sukirti Dwivedi for NDTV.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Our top story, the Indian Meteorological Department has warned that Cyclone Tauktae is expected to intensify into an extremely severe cyclonic storm. The Weather Department also said that the cyclone is likely to pass close to Mumbai and may cause heavy rainfall in the city. In fact, it's already started drizzling in Mumbai. Now, thousands of people, including COVID patients, have been evacuated in Mumbai and in Gujarat as well to safer locations. Cyclone Tauktae is expected to reach the Gujarat coast today evening, unleashing wind speeds of up to 175 kilometers an hour. Meanwhile, the National Disaster Response Force has increased the number of teams earmarked to undertake relief and rescue measures. The NDRF has formed 100 teams and they are being deployed in the coastal regions of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Kerala, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu.
देखिए, साइक्लोन तौते जो है अभी ये महाराष्ट्र और कोंकण कोस्ट के से गुजर रहा है और कल शाम तक आईएमडी के पूर्वानुमान के मुताबिक कल शाम तक लैंडफॉल हो सकता है। लैंडफॉल भावनगर, जूनागढ़ और दीव के आसपास होने की संभावना है ये लैंडफॉल के समय इसकी कैटेगरी होगी वेरी सीवियर साइक्लोनिक स्टॉर्म। वेरी सीवियर साइक्लोनिक स्टॉर्म जो है 120 किलोमीटर प्रति घंटे और या उससे ज्यादा की हवा चलती है और 160-170 तक जा सकता है। 50 से ज्यादा टीमें एनडीआरएफ की वहां लग जाएंगी शाम तक या देर रात तक, और लगातार हम लोग इवैक्यूएशन और अवेयरनेस जनरेशन का काम कर रहे हैं।
Light rain has begun and IMD predicts that through the day the rainfall intensity can go up. Right now at Worli Sea Face you can see that it is very lightly drizzling at the moment. However, there is low tide, which in fact is like a good news for Mumbaikas, because even in case of heavy rains, low tide is helpful because there won't be any waterlogging in event of a heavy rain. However, the IMD has predicted that through the day there will be intense showers and intense rainfall in parts of Mumbai, and since morning, in fact early morning, it has started raining, and there are few instances in Mumbai where trees have fallen down. So however, the government says that it is fully prepared to make sure that the extent of damage is reduced and it is minimized. And even at Worli Sea Face, you can see that the trees in and around here are in fact tied, and if I can just show you, and if you can just see around there, the trees are in fact, the coconut trees are tied by a rope to these tetrapods so that they won't in case of heavy wind and rainfall, they won't fall down. So the government says that as far as the hospitals and COVID patients are concerned, they have made sure that the infrastructure is in place. The power, in case of a power outage, they have enough backup as well, and they made sure that the COVID patients get the uninterrupted oxygen and power supply as well. So from the 3 makeshift jumbo centers in Mumbai, they have already shifted 580 people, and across the Konkan belt, the government says that they have already evacuated around 6,500 people to a safer location. So the government says it is completely prepared. However, the IMD says that Mumbai is expected to receive heavy rainfall through the day with a wind speed of 60 to 80 km per hour. We just have to see how the day progresses. But in the morning, at least, it has started raining, and in different parts of Mumbai, the situation is, at least till now in the morning, is quite under control. In Mumbai, with camera person Praveen Ji Rohit, this is Purva Chitnas for NDTV.
Now, another news, senior virologist Shahid Jameel quit as the chief advisor to the centre's COVID genome surveillance project. He recently wrote a piece in which he had said that scientists in India are facing a stubborn response to evidence-based policy making. In an article in the New York Times, Dr. Jameel wrote, "What worries me is that we may not even be able to measure the peak cases accurately. Data show that testing is increasing at a far slower rate than cases, and in the scenario, numbers will reach a plateau, not because case numbers have stopped rising, but because testing capacity will be tapped out." He also said that scientists in India are facing a stubborn resistance to evidence-based policy making. On April 30th, over 800 Indian scientists appealed to the Prime Minister demanding access to the data that could help them further study and predict and curb the virus. Decision making based on data is yet another casualty as the pandemic in India has spun out of control, is what Dr. Jameel wrote. When NDTV contacted him, he said he would answer. He didn't want to talk on this. He would only talk about any science-based news. Now, an anti-coronavirus drug developed by Defence Research and Development Organization will be launched today, with Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh distributing around 10,000 doses to some hospitals in the national capital. This drug, called 2-deoxy-D-glucose or 2-DG, was developed by the DRDO lab in collaboration with the Hyderabad-based pharma giant Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and the Drugs Controller General of India, the country's top drug regulator, approved the medicine for emergency use. So it will be distributed today. Let's get you the COVID numbers now. In Maharashtra on Sunday recorded the second highest number of deaths due to COVID since the pandemic began last year. A total of 974 deaths on Sunday. The highest fatality count was on the 28th of April with 985 deaths. 34,389 fresh cases were reported on Sunday. The positivity rate at 17.29%. Mumbai reported 1,544 fresh cases and 60 deaths reported there. Well, to talk more about the COVID situation across the country, we're joined by Dr. Tinku Joseph K, Chief of Interventional Pulmonology, Amrita Hospitals, Thiruvananthapuram. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us this morning. Right now in Kerala, the lockdown has been increased, and in 4 of the districts which are of which are seeing the maximum number of cases and a surge in cases, there's a triple lockdown that has been put in place there. Tell us more about what have you seen during this period of the lockdown? What sort of impact has it had?
Thank you. So ever since the lockdown has been imposed in Kerala, there has been a steady decrease in the number of cases, because prior to the lockdown we had close to 40 to 43,000 cases per day. And ever since the lockdown has imposed, there is a steady decline in the number of cases. And yesterday we had reported close to 29,000 cases. So the lockdown is working pretty well. And since today onwards, in 4 districts, we have imposed the triple lockdown policy as well. So hopefully the number of cases will be reduced drastically in another couple of weeks.
Right, sir. One of the concerns has been a lot of younger people getting affected by COVID and especially requiring, major medical intervention. And this was something we never saw in the first wave, though, of course, we still don't know whether this is in terms of just the absolute numbers, since the numbers are just so high, or whether it's percentages. But what has the experience been there? There's also been concern over the overuse of steroids and medication.
Okay, compared to the first wave, in the present second wave, what is happening is predominantly, I am one of the persons who is managing one of the ICUs in our Amrita Hospital. So in the first wave, it was predominantly the patients who were getting admitted to the ICUs was beyond 55, like 55 to 75 was the category. Those patients with the uncontrolled diabetes, then kidney disease, and the cancer patients were the people who were more prone for this illness. But the things are different in the present wave. The age group is different. People right from 20 to 40 are getting admitted. In my ICU, 80% of the patients are in this particular category. So the difference is the younger generation is affecting. And if you ask me the reason, the definitive reason would be that vaccine is working. And that's why the elderly are much more safer. The younger generation has not received vaccine. That's why in most of the ICUs across India, the age group between 20 to 45 are being more admitted.
All right, that's an interesting take on, why we're seeing more younger people affected. We're also joined by Dr. Sumantha Chatterjee, consultant cardiologist at Amri Dhakuria Hospital from Kolkata, and also Dr. N.N. Khanna, interventional cardiologist, Apollo Hospital here in Delhi. Dr. Sumantha, finally in Bengal, a lockdown has been put in place, and this is something people had felt should have happened a lot earlier. Your cases are very high, and also the number of deaths on Sunday was the highest daily deaths that were reported.
Yeah, sure. The exact reason behind it, I don't know, but definitely from yesterday, the lockdown has been imposed. And the difference from the first wave and the second wave is we are getting, being an interventional cardiologist, we are getting less people are coming for acute coronary syndrome and heart blocks. Previously, in the first wave, many patients are coming with acute coronary syndromes and heart blocks, complete heart blocks, second-degree heart blocks, and we are getting pacemakers and all those things. But nowadays, we are not getting that much population are having cardiovascular disease. Maybe because of this thing that now we are getting young population, maybe 30s, 40s, and 50s, who are not vaccinated. That may be a reason behind this, and maybe some transportation issues and selection bias may be there, and bed scarcities and are there definitely.
Right. Are you hopeful that this lockdown will now help, medical services at least, give them some sort of relief, maybe in terms of, doubling down and ensuring their resources are in place? There are also reports how it's even a challenge getting testing done in Kolkata, and one only wonders what it's like, in the rural parts of West Bengal.
Yeah, sure. Lockdown will definitely help, I think, to reduce the numbers for better bed management and critical care bed management from that point of view. Definitely, we hope that this lockdown will cut down the rates of, people will get better bed management here. I think so, definitely.
All right. We're also joined by Dr. Khanna. Dr. Khanna, one of the things that we're seeing during this time is that people who seem to be on the road to recovery post-COVID, then they get cardiac arrests, and there have been several cases like this reported recently. If you could tell us more about the reasons for this.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question, an observation. What happens in COVID is that, even when you recover from COVID, that means if you are negative, you test yourself negative for COVID RT-PCR, your blood has a very high thrombogenicity because of this infection. And this is very interesting that not only that it happens while you are in the hospital or at home, it actually continues for another 2 to 3 months. So this is a very important issue, not only heart attacks, but it also leads to brain attacks and strokes and also pulmonary embolism. And all three of them are catastrophic and they can cause death. And in case of heart attack and pulmonary embolism, it could be a sudden death. And to prevent this, we need to be putting all our patients, especially the high-risk ones, on anticoagulations. Now we have very good oral drugs, and also that these patients have to be mobile and also very well hydrated. If we can take care of these three things, many of these can be prevented.
All right, so that's the sort of care that needs to be taken. I was just discussing earlier with Dr. Joseph about how there are concerns over medication in COVID cases, that sometimes the steroids are introduced too early. What would you say on that?
Yeah, that's again another concern, because now what has happened is the scare and the steroids have come together. And we have seen patients, being started on steroids right from day one, and also in mild cases where they are not indicated. And in fact, if you start steroids early in the treatment, you actually lead to more viremia and more complications in terms of infection. So the steroids are a life-saving measure. They are the game changer, as is oxygen. But the most important thing is the steroids have to be given by a doctor who is a competent doctor, and also has to be given in an appropriate time and for the shortest course. If that is given, then many lives can be changed and many complications can be avoided. But giving steroids as a blanket treatment to everybody creates more problem than really the advantages we get out of it.
Right. One of the problems also is, I think, self-medication, because there are many reports of, people just sharing their prescriptions. And, if here we have a situation in which whole families are affected. So one prescription is being used for everyone, and that one size fits all does not really work in terms of treating COVID. Dr. Joseph, also, if you could tell us, a big concern in various states in the north is of the black fungus, mucormycosis, that is being reported. What is the situation in Kerala? Have you had such cases?
Okay. So far, the number of cases reported in Kerala is less than 10. We don't have a significant spread of the disease compared to Delhi, Gujarat and Maharashtra, where it was reported initially. One of the main reasons for the increase, the zygomycetes or mucormycosis, it's one of the rare fungal infections, if you ask me. And previously, most of the doctors used to might have seen maybe 1 or 2 cases in a month, and now that was predominantly seen in people who are suffering from uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, who are on insulin therapy, as well as in patients who are suffering from cancer and who had undergone any organ transplantation, like the solid organ, as well as the bone marrow transplantation, as well as the HIV patients. So these are the category of people who are prone to develop mucormycosis infection. Now let's see what is different in COVID-19. So the COVID-19 patients, unfortunately in India, the present scenario is that let it be mild, moderate or severe, almost everyone is on steroids. So that has to be stopped. The patients who require steroid are the ones who are suffering from moderate to severe illness. So the guidelines has to be followed. Each and every patient, there is no indication to be on steroids. So now let's see what is happening. The patients who are on steroids, naturally their blood sugar level goes up, and unfortunately the blood sugar level is not monitored in most of the places because it is extremely difficult due to the huge load of patients. And naturally the hyperglycemia or the increased blood sugar level acts as a culture media for the virus, for the fungus to grow in. So that's how it is happening. And
right.
Yeah.
Right, and so this is something that really needs to be watched out for in those patients of concern post-recovering from COVID, because it's tragic to recover from COVID and then get affected by a case like this. Thank you so much, doctors, for taking time out and joining us on the channel this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, time for us to slip into a short break. We'll get you more news on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, let's get to the latest on the markets, and Indian indices opened on a positive note this morning with the Nifty above 14,700 amid better global cues. And there you can see Tata Motors is up by 0.45%. That's at 214. Cipla, however, is down, and their UPL is up as well. The Sensex was up by 264 points on opening, and about 1,296 shares advanced, and 264 shares actually declined. There you can see that Nifty top 6 losers: L&T, Industars, NMDC, and Escorts is in the red as well. It's down by 3.4%, while Bata India is up. L&T is down as well, down by around 2%. Global cues, though, were mixed early hours of trade this morning. There you can see the Nifty top 6 movers: ITC, UPL, SBI, all in the green. SBI up by 1.93%, and Tata Motors up by 0.21%, while Cipla is down by 2.4%. Sun Pharma is in the red as well, down by 1%. Cadila is up by 0.30%, and Cipla is down by over 2%. IndusInd Bank, there you can see, is in the green, up by 2%, and L&T is down by 2%. Well, with that, time for us to slip into a short break. We'll get you more news updates on the other side. Stay with us. Evacuated to safe locations. Cyclone Tauktae is, as we said, expected to reach Gujarat coast this evening, unleashing wind speeds up to 175 kilometers an hour. Meanwhile, the National Disaster Response Force has increased the number of teams earmarked to undertake relief and rescue measures. We know that 2 deaths have taken place in Goa because of the cyclonic storm, where hundreds of trees also were uprooted due to the storm.
Since morning in Mumbai, light rain has begun, and IMD predicts that through the day, the rainfall intensity can go up. Right now at Worli Sea Face, you can see that it is very lightly drizzling at the moment. However, there is low tide, which in fact is like a good news for Mumbaikars, because even in case of heavy rains, low tide is helpful, because there won't be any waterlogging in event of a heavy rain. However, the IMD has predicted that through the day there will be intense showers and intense rainfall in parts of Mumbai, and since morning, in fact early morning, it has started raining, and there are few instances in Mumbai where trees have fallen down. So however, the government says that it is fully prepared to make sure that the extent of damage is reduced and it is minimized. And even at Worli Sea Face, you can see that the trees in and around here are in fact tied, and if I can just show you, and if you can just see around there, the trees are in fact, the coconut trees are tied by a rope to these tetrapods, so that they won't in case of heavy wind and rainfall, they won't fall down. So the government says that as far as the hospitals and COVID patients are concerned, they have made sure that the infrastructure is in place. The power, in case of a power outage, they have enough backup as well, and they made sure that the COVID patients get the uninterrupted oxygen and power supply as well. So from the 3 makeshift jumbo centers in Mumbai, they have already shifted 580 people, and across the Konkan belt, the government says that they have already evacuated around 6,500 people to a safer location. The government says it is completely prepared. However, the IMD says that Mumbai is expected to receive heavy rainfall through the day with a wind speed of 60 to 80 km per hour. We just have to see how the day progresses. But in the morning, at least, it has started raining, and in different parts of Mumbai, the situation is, at least till now in the morning, is quite under control. In Mumbai, with camera person Praveen Ji Rohit, this is Purva Chitnis for NDTV.
An anti-coronavirus drug developed by the Defence Research and Development Organisation DRDO will be launched today, with Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh distributing around 10,000 doses to some hospitals in the national capital. The drug, called 2-deoxy-D-glucose or 2-DG, was developed by a DRDO lab in collaboration with the Hyderabad-based pharma giant Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. The Drugs Controller General of India, the country's top drug regulator, approved the medicine for emergency use. It is going to be distributed today. Now, the latest numbers, the data has come in from the Health Ministry, and 2.81 lakh cases have been reported in the last 24 hours. So, cases have gone down under the 3 lakh mark. But do remember, on Mondays, usually there is a dip in the number of cases as the testing is also lower over the weekend. So, 2.81 lakh new cases reported in the last 24 hours, 4,106 deaths reported during that period. So, that remains a worry, with the number of deaths still high, with over 4,000 deaths being reported every day for the last couple of days. So those are the latest numbers that have been released by the Health Ministry, with 2.81 lakh new cases being reported in the last 24 hours. As we said, that usually cases do dip on Mondays as the number of tests go down, and the positivity rate is 17.88%. And let's take a look at Maharashtra numbers. And Maharashtra on Sunday recorded the second highest number of deaths due to COVID since the pandemic began. A total of 974 deaths were reported on Sunday. That's the highest fatality was on the 28th of April, with 985 deaths. 34,389 fresh cases were reported on Sunday. The positivity rate was 17.29%. Mumbai reported 1,544 fresh cases and 60 deaths in that 24-hour period. Now, West Bengal has entered a 15-day lockdown. It also reported the highest ever COVID deaths at 147 deaths being reported in 24 hours. And the positivity rate is also particularly high. But let's go across to Moni for more news on this. And Monideepa, finally, Bengal is under a lockdown, much needed given the increasing cases and the number of deaths being reported.
That's right, the highest ever in the last 24-hour cycle. Yesterday we got the West Bengal government bulletin, which said 147 deaths. The highest before that was 144. Clearly the numbers in Bengal are on the rise. Though thankfully the number of infections seems to have dipped below 20,000 per day for the last 2 days. So that perhaps is some kind of relief. But 147 people in the state dying due to the corona virus. It's certainly got the state government very, very worried, which is why the lockdown. However, since yesterday when the lockdown began, there have also been violations. In Kolkata alone, some 70 plus people had to be detained, prosecuted, arrested and booked for violating the laws, and over 340 people were booked for not wearing their masks. I mean, even today this kind of violation continues, but the lockdown, the 15-day shutdown, certainly coming at a time when huge concerns about growing numbers in Bengal about COVID. Positivity, that also has risen. The statewide positivity is now almost 10%. The doctors have been reporting in the city for some time now that the case positivity is over 30%. So yes, huge concerns, and hopefully the lockdown will salvage the situation somewhat.
All right, Monideepa, thanks so much for joining us there with the latest developments. News now from Bihar, and no dignity in death in Nalanda in Bihar. A COVID victim's body was taken to the crematorium in a municipal corporation cart without any vehicle being available. Now, this video has come to light. It's from the 13th of May. In fact, the villagers there are alleging that the corporation took 16,000 rupees to take the body and cremate it, according to guidelines which were issued by the state. If a victim's relatives are unable to cremate the body, the administration is supposed to step in and do so. So villagers alleging that 16,000 was charged for this service. And news from UP, where the centre has directed UP and Bihar to prevent the dumping of dead bodies in the Ganga and its tributaries and focus on their safe disposal and dignified cremation after corpses were seen floating in the rivers following a spurt in the number of coronavirus cases. At a review meeting which was conducted on the 15th and 16th of May, the centre said dumping of dead bodies and partially burnt or decomposed corpses in the Ganga and its tributaries have recently been reported, which is most undesirable and alarming. Also in UP, they have started river patrolling to ensure that no bodies are dumped. Also, they are in UP, 5,000 rupees is being offered to the families to help cremate their loved ones.
जो गंगा जी के किनारे हैं वहां पर पुलिस लगातार भ्रमण कर रही है, जिससे कि गंगा जी में किसी भी प्रकार की वस्तु बहाकर, कोई शव बहाकर प्रदूषण न किया जाए। दूसरा, जो आसपास के गांव हैं उसमें लगातार पुलिस भ्रमण करके वहां के मौजूद लोगों से, प्रधानों से, चौकीदारों से, अन्य जो संभ्रांत व्यक्ति हैं गांव के, उनको जागरूक कर रही है इस प्रकार की घटना न करने के लिए।
Well, let's go across to Alok Pandey now for more. Alok, this has caused a lot of outrage. The bodies floating in the Ganga or buried just alongside the river, and there have been major concerns regarding this and also concerns about the data that is emerging from Uttar Pradesh. And now the centre too has asked for the government to ensure that this does not happen.
Well, yes, you are right, and that is why you saw those river patrols happening in Balia, which is a district on the border of Bihar in eastern UP. But you are right, the emergence of so many bodies in so many districts by the Ganga River do point to a lot of concern. Yesterday, we had a situation in Prayagraj, which, as we know, is home to the Sangam, the confluence of the Ganga and the Yamuna or the Jamuna River, and is also one of India's most holy places. You had a situation where, again, many bodies were found buried in the sandbanks by the Ganga on two prominent ghats, one of them being the Fafamau Ghat, which is the entry to Prayagraj when you travel from the Lucknow side. Now, that, of course, is a matter of serious concern. Again, the district administration there has not reacted to this. They've said nothing about it. But the visuals are there for everyone to see, and I'm sure we will be playing them out too. And the locals there have told the media who went to cover it that these burials have happened over a month, and that many of the burials have also happened because villagers coming in from different areas close to Prayagraj did not have the money to pay the jacked up prices that were being charged for wood for cremation, and that is why they preferred to bury the bodies and then go away. How many of these bodies are of suspected COVID patients, we cannot say. It is perhaps up to the administration to make things clearer, but that does not seem to be happening right now. You are right, the government also gave out these advertisements, full-page advertisements, in fact, in most papers yesterday. And they said that anyone who could not afford to cremate the bodies of their relatives would be paid 5,000 rupees by the government to do so. And appeals were made not for villagers and for anyone not to dump bodies in any water bodies, and also not to bury them in sandbanks along any rivers. Now, it remains to be seen whether that will be followed or not. But what the government has also done is that they have gone ahead and posted some cops also on major ghats and other areas to try and ensure that people coming in don't bury their bodies. But even for the last month, so many bodies being found across the river is a matter of major concern. Uttar Pradesh, meanwhile, reported a little over 10,000 cases yesterday, Gargi. That's the official figure. So officially, at least, cases seem to be coming down. The reality may be a little different. All right,
Alok, thanks so much for joining us with those details. News now from Madhya Pradesh, and amid the spiraling cases of COVID in the state, the government's data of deaths is much lower than figures emerging from cemeteries and crematoriums. One crematorium in Bhopal claims that it cremated 1,500 COVID bodies in April. However, the official numbers are still low. The government, however, is claiming they are not hiding any data. Anurag Dwari investigates.
Are deaths in Madhya Pradesh being underreported? An NDTV reality check at the crematoriums of the state's capital Bhopal sharply contradicts the Shivraj Singh Chauhan-led government's data, which puts the COVID deaths in the capital at 104 in April. The death logbook which NDTV got access to tells a different story. The secretary of the Bhadbada crematorium claims to have cremated over 1,500 COVID bodies in April alone.
पूरे मार्च में 307 मृतक देह आई, उसमें से 152 सामान्य मृतक देह थी और 155 कोरोना मृतक देह थी। वहीं अपन अप्रैल में आते हैं तो अप्रैल में एकदम से विस्फोटक स्थिति आई और पूरे 1 से 30 अप्रैल के बीच में 2052 मृतक देह भदभदा में आई, जिसमें से 398 सामान्य मृतक देह और 1652 कोरोना मृतक देह थी। मृतक के परिजन एक फॉर्म भरते हैं, फिर रसीद कटवाते हैं, तो वो पूरा एक सिस्टमेटिक रिकॉर्ड हमारे पास रहता है और वो रिकॉर्ड प्रतिदिन शासन के भी कुछ विभाग वो प्रतिदिन हमारे यहाँ से रात में आंकड़ा लेकर जाते हैं।
The Bhadbada crematorium and the Zada cemetery in Bhopal were initially authorized to perform the last rites of COVID patients in the city. The committee managing the cemetery says that the month of April was horrific.
अप्रैल की उसकी बात करें तो बहुत भयानक स्थिति थी। कम से कम मैं 30 साल से इस कब्रिस्तान को देख रहा हूँ। 30 साल के अंदर मेरे टाइम के अंदर एक अप्रैल का ऐसा महीना था बहुत टेंशन भरा, बहुत डेड बॉडियाँ थी। 388 बॉडी है कोरोना की। कभी हमारे पास ऐसा नहीं है। डेली आम दिनों के अंदर आती हैं तो हमारे पास 4-5 आती थी, लेकिन इसके अंदर 15, 18, 20, 27, 32 ऐसी बॉडियाँ कंटिन्यूज आई। लेकिन सच्चाई तो है, सरकार ये बात सही है, 100 में 100% आंकड़े छुपा रही। कुछ नर्सिंग होमों की बॉडी आती है तो डायरेक्ट घरों पे दे रहे हैं।
The state government, however, denied under-reporting of deaths.
कि चाहे डेथ का मामला हो या डेथ ऑडिट का मामला हो, ये छुपाने का, इसको हाइड करने का ना कोई मंशा है और ना इसकी जरूरत है।
Data accessed by NDTV shows that in Bhopal alone, adding up the figures from the cemetery and crematorium, showed 3,811 COVID bodies were cremated in April, with 2,557 bodies from Bhopal district alone. But according to government figures, there were only 104 deaths in April from COVID in Bhopal. The official death figure in the state during the entire COVID period is 6,913 so far, while there have been a total of 846 deaths in Bhopal according to official state data. With Anurag Dwari in Bhopal, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Well, that time for us to slip into a short break. More news on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. Breaking news coming in from Bengal, where 4 TMC leaders are to be charge-sheeted in the Narda scam. West Bengal Urban Development Minister Farhad Hakim, Subrata Mukherjee, Madan Mitra and Sovan Chatterjee, against whom the West Bengal governor accorded prosecution sanction in the Narda case, are expected to be arrested shortly. Let's go across to Moni Deepa for more. Moni, give us the latest developments.
Yes, indeed. Sudden developments early this morning at around 9 o'clock in the morning. The CBI team, including a whole lot of Jawans of Central Forces, they landed up at the homes of all these 4 persons. Of these 4 persons, 3 of them are with the Trinamool Congress, and Shobhan Chatterjee used to be a minister when the whole Narda case unfolded, in 2016, and when the Narda sting operation was conducted in 2014. Shobhan Chatterjee then went went off to the BJP and has now quit the BJP. So he is not with the Trinamool. So essentially, three senior leaders of the Trinamool Congress and Shobhan Chatterjee now at the CBI office in Kolkata in connection with the Narda case. In the morning, when at 9 o'clock Mr. Firhad Hakim stepped out of his house along with the Central Forces and CBI officials, he categorically told the media that he is being arrested in the Narda case and that he would deal with the matter in court. But we have subsequently got some clarification from the CBI sources who say that at this moment what is happening is that a charge sheet will be filed against them and they may be shown as arrested and taken to court for hearing of the case. This is a sudden and shock development, but completely unexpected. Question mark there, because on the 9th of May, the governor himself had given sanction to the CBI's request for prosecution of these 4 persons in the Narda case. There were some questions on whether the governor could indeed give the sanction, but that is apparently so. He can. He sanctioned it, and therefore this action by the CBI couldn't have been completely unanticipated. Just to quickly refresh you on the case, in 2014, a journalist posing as a businessman had approached over a dozen persons in Kolkata. 12 of them were Trinamool leaders, supporters, workers. One was a police officer. He had approached them as a businessman, offering them bribes because he pretended he wanted to invest in Bengal and wanted their help. All these persons were allegedly seen taking cash in their hand, except Mukul Roy, who was then with the Trinamool Congress and is now with the BJP. All of them were seen taking cash, including the police officer. And in 2016, just ahead of the Bengal Assembly elections, that's when these tapes surfaced, went public, and there was a huge hue and cry about it. A case was filed, and now the charge sheet is ready to be submitted in court. So there are these 4 persons who now face action. They are right now at the CBI office in Kolkata and expected to be presented in court any time now. But of course, a shock development. Already we have Trinamool protesters, supporters, blocking the roads in front of Firhad Hakim's house, and Trinamool leaders who have come on record are saying this is nothing but vengeance by the ruling party at the center, BJP, for the drubbing it has received in Bengal in the assembly elections.
All right, Monideepa, so those are the big developments, shock developments coming out of Bengal, where 4 Trinamool leaders have been held, including a minister. A charge sheet is expected shortly. So the centre there moving in on the CBI moving in on the Narda scam case. We'll continue to get you more updates on that story. Time for us to slip into a short break. Stay with us.